You know that feeling when you see a real classic Mustang sitting quietly in a driveway, paint shining, chrome catching the sun, and you start wondering, could that actually be for sale? Well, today, we're looking at 5 classic Mustangs that are on the market right now, and a couple of them might surprise you. All right, let's take a walk and start with the first one. Car number 1, 1965 Ford Mustang Coupe, 2-door. Price, $22,500. Location, Westchester, Pennsylvania. Specs, 9,906 miles shown. Automatic transmission. Exterior, blue. Interior, black. Fuel, gasoline. Now this one is a really sharp-looking 1965 Mustang Coupe, finished in a deep blue that fits the body lines beautifully. The early Mustangs like this have such a clean design, long hood, short rear deck, and that shape never really gets old. According to the seller, the car has been tastefully modified, which usually means upgrades that improve drivability without ruining the classic character. Under the hood, these early Mustangs commonly came with the famous inline-6 or small block V8, and both were known for being smooth and reliable. What really stands out here is the condition. The seller describes it as very, very clean, and from that mileage reading, it looks like the car has been preserved carefully. The black interior is a classic combination with blue paint, and if it's original or well restored, that cockpit with the simple gauges and thin steering wheel really takes you right back to the mid-60s. The seller says it runs and performs perfectly, and mentions it's great for cruising or taking to car shows. That's really what these coupes are all about. Easy to drive, comfortable, and still one of the most recognizable classic American cars ever built. For $22,500, a clean, well-running 65 Mustang Coupe like this can actually be a pretty appealing entry point into classic car ownership. Let's move on to the next one. Car number 2, 1965 Ford Mustang Coupe, 2-door. Price, $17,000. Location, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Specs, 39,000 miles. Automatic transmission. Exterior, white. Interior, black. Engine, 3.3-liter inline-6. 2 owners, clean title. Here we have another 1965 Mustang Coupe, but this one comes with a slightly different story. Finished in classic white with a black interior, this is one of those timeless combinations that just works on these cars. The lines of the Mustang really show well in lighter colors, especially when the chrome trim and bumpers are in good shape. This one is powered by the 3.3-liter inline 6-cylinder engine, which was a very common option in the early Mustangs. While it doesn't have the muscle of the V8 models, these 6-cylinder cars are often smoother, simpler, and sometimes better preserved because many owners treated them more like daily drivers than race cars. The listing shows 39,000 miles, and the seller says the car has had only 2 owners, which is always interesting with classic vehicles. Cars with a short ownership history sometimes have a better chance of being maintained consistently over the decades. Even better, the seller states the car has no significant damage or problems and carries a clean title. That's a big deal when you're talking about a vehicle that's over half a century old. The seller keeps the description pretty straightforward, basically saying serious buyers only. That usually means they've already dealt with plenty of curious messages and want someone genuinely interested. At $17,000, this could be a solid, straightforward entry-level classic Mustang for someone who just wants to enjoy weekend drives. Now let's look at something a little more affordable. Car number 3, 1966 Ford Mustang. Price, $8,000. Location, Duncansville, Pennsylvania. Specs, inline-6 engine, automatic transmission. Condition, used, good. Inspection valid until April 2026. Now this one is interesting because it sits in a completely different price bracket. At $8,000, this 1966 Mustang looks like a driver-level project car, something you can enjoy right away but still improve over time. It's equipped with the inline 6-cylinder engine and automatic transmission, a simple and dependable combination that many classic Mustang fans appreciate. These engines are known for being easy to maintain and surprisingly durable. The seller says the car runs and drives well, which is always the most important thing with older vehicles. A car that moves under its own power is a much easier project than one that doesn't. Now, cosmetically, the car does need some work. The seller mentions the body needs paint and some panel alignment, which suggests it may have had minor bodywork or simply needs a proper restoration finish. The good news is the floors and quarter panels are described as solid. On a classic Mustang, that's actually one of the biggest concerns, because rust in those areas can become expensive quickly. The seller also says they took the car in a trade, but decided to sell it instead. That happens pretty often with classic cars. Someone acquires one unexpectedly and realizes they'd rather pass it along. For someone who enjoys light restoration projects, $8,000 for a running 1966 Mustang could be a very tempting starting point. Alright, now let's look at one of the most fun body styles of the Mustang. Car number 4, 1966 Ford Mustang Coupe, 2-door. Price, $18,000. Location, Weehawken, New Jersey. Specs, 92,000 miles. Automatic transmission. Exterior, blue. Interior, black.
engine, straight six. Now this one is a convertible, and that immediately changes the personality of the car. A 1966 Mustang convertible is really the kind of classic that feels made for sunny weekend drives. Top down, wind coming through the cabin, that long hood stretching out in front of you, it's exactly the kind of experience people imagine when they think about vintage American cars. This particular example is finished in blue with a black interior, a combination that tends to look fantastic when the top is down. Under the hood is the straight six-cylinder engine paired with an automatic transmission, which makes it a relaxed cruiser rather than a performance machine. But honestly, with a convertible like this, the goal is usually comfort and style, not speed. The seller makes it clear they are only dealing with serious inquiries, and they also emphasize that the listing description, not any automated message, accurately represents the car. That kind of detail might seem small, but it shows the seller wants potential buyers to rely on the real information. For $18,000, a running and presentable classic Mustang convertible could attract quite a bit of attention. Now let's check out the fifth car, and this one has a bit more muscle. Car number 5, 1967 Ford Mustang Coupe, two-door. Price, $25,000. Location, Gloucester, Virginia. Specs, 30,000 miles shown. Automatic transmission. Exterior, black. Engine, 351 Windsor small block V8. New tires, new exhaust, new carburetor. Garage kept, no AC, no power steering. Now we've stepped into the 1967 Mustang, which was the first major redesign after the original 1965 launch. The body got longer, wider, and more aggressive, giving the car a stronger muscle car stance. Even today, many collectors consider the 1967 model one of the best-looking Mustangs ever built. This one comes finished in black, which really emphasizes the sharper lines of the 1967 body style. Under the hood is a 351 Windsor V8, a very respected small block engine known for strong torque and a classic V8 sound. That engine alone makes this car significantly more powerful than the earlier six-cylinder Mustangs we looked at. The seller mentions several recent upgrades: new tires, new exhaust, new carburetor. Those upgrades suggest the car has been maintained with the goal of keeping it ready for regular driving. It's also described as garage kept, which is always a good sign for preserving paint, interior, and overall condition. Interestingly, the car doesn't have air conditioning or power steering, which was actually quite normal in the late 1960s. Some collectors even prefer these simpler setups because they keep the car closer to its original mechanical feel. At $25,000, this Mustang sits in the higher range of today's list, but with a V8 engine and the desirable 1967 body style, it's easy to see why. That's the first 5 classic Mustangs on today's list, and honestly, we've already seen everything from budget project cars to clean V8 cruisers. But we're just getting started. In the next section, we're going to look at 5 more classic cars for sale, and a couple of them have stories that make them even more interesting. So, let's keep going.
Car number 6, 1981 Chevrolet Camaro Z28 Coupe. Price, $16,500. Location, Middletown, New York. Specs, 100,000 miles, automatic transmission, engine, 350 cubic inch V8, exterior, black, interior, silver, T-top roof, clean title. Now this 1981 Camaro Z28 represents the final year of the second generation Camaro, a body style that ran from 1970 through 1981. And if you grew up around muscle cars, you probably remember exactly what these looked like. The low nose, wide stance, and that long, sweeping rear window. They have a very unmistakable late 70s and early 80s attitude. This one is finished in black with a silver interior, and it also has one of the coolest features of that era, T-tops. If you've never experienced T-tops, it's kind of the best of both worlds. You get that open-air feel like a convertible, but still keep the structure of a hardtop. On a sunny day, pulling those panels out and cruising down the road is just part of the experience. Under the hood is a 350 cubic inch V8 paired with a TH350 automatic transmission, a combination that's well known for durability and smooth performance. According to the seller, the car still runs nicely and is very much a driver condition Z28, meaning it's a car you can enjoy without worrying about keeping it in a museum. The paint is described as black PPG base coat with a 2K clear, which suggests it has had a quality repaint at some point. That kind of finish tends to hold up well and gives the car a deep shine. The one thing the seller mentions is that the interior needs a little TLC, which isn't unusual for a car that's over 40 years old. Seat upholstery, trim pieces, or carpeting often show wear before anything else. But overall, with a clean New York title and a running V8, this Z28 sounds like a solid cruiser for someone who enjoys classic American muscle with a little bit of that early 80s flavor. Now let's move to something very different, a project that could turn into something really special. Car number 7, 1968 Chevrolet Camaro Coupe, price car. Price, $5,900. Location, Indiana, Pennsylvania. Specs, 50,000 miles shown, no engine, no transmission, exterior, gray primer, interior, black. So here we have a 1968 Camaro, but this one is clearly aimed at someone who enjoys a restoration challenge. Right now, the car does not have an engine or transmission, which means whoever buys it will need to plan a full drivetrain build. For some enthusiasts, though, that's actually part of the fun. It gives you the freedom to build the car exactly the way you want. The seller says the restoration has already started, which is encouraging. Important work has already been done, including new floor panels and a new quarter panel installation. Those are some of the major structural areas on classic Camaros, so having that work completed can save a lot of time and money. The body is currently sitting in gray primer with red wheels, which gives it that classic unfinished project look, almost like a blank canvas waiting for the final paint job. The seller also mentions they simply have too many car projects, which is something a lot of classic car enthusiasts can probably relate to. It's pretty common for someone to start a build and eventually realize they just don't have the time to finish it. At $5,900, this is definitely one of the most affordable classic Camaros you'll see, but it's clearly meant for someone who's ready to put in the work. If restored properly, a 1968 Camaro can become a very desirable classic muscle car. Now let's take a look at something on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. Car number 8, 1965 Chevrolet Nova SS, classic two-door. Price, $35,000. Location, Ossining, New York. Specs, 355 small block V8, aluminum heads and intake, Holley 750 carburetor, MSD digital 6A ignition, Power Glide 2-speed transmission, Ford 9-inch rear axle with 3.73 gears, 4-wheel disc brakes, roll cage and mini tubs. Now this car is a completely different animal. This 1965 Chevrolet Nova SS isn't just a classic cruiser. It's built to be a serious street and strip machine. According to the listing, the car has only 301 miles since the build, which strongly suggests it has been recently completed or fully rebuilt. Under the hood sits a 355 cubic inch small block V8, upgraded with aluminum heads and aluminum intake and a modified Holley 750 carburetor. That combination alone can produce some very serious horsepower. The ignition system uses MSD digital 6A, a popular setup in performance builds because it provides strong, reliable spark at higher RPM. The power goes through a Power Glide 2-speed automatic transmission with a 2500 stall converter and trans brake, which is commonly used in drag racing setups. Out back is a Ford 9-inch rear end with 3.73 gears, one of the strongest rear axles ever made, and a favorite among high-performance builds. The chassis itself has also been reinforced. The car includes rear frame rails tied into a roll cage, plus mini tubs, which allow for much wider rear tires. That's usually done so the car can put serious power to the pavement. Suspension upgrades include QA1 adjustable coilover shocks and Cowtrack traction bars, all designed to help the car hook up under acceleration. Even with all those performance upgrades, the interior still features a white bench seat with a full rear seat, which gives it that classic sleeper look. And one really interesting detail, the car was originally built with a direct port nitro system, although the seller says it has never been used. The paint is described as flawless pearl gray, and the seller says it looks incredible in sunlight. Overall, this is not just a classic, it's a fully built performance Nova that's ready for both street cruising and occasional drag strip fun. Now let's return to the Camaro lineup. Car number 9, 1981 Chevrolet Camaro Z28, Coupe. Price, $17,000. Location, South Plainfield, New Jersey. Specs, 98,199 original miles, 350 V8 bored .03 over, L82 Corvette camshaft, TH350 automatic transmission, 3.42 rear gears, Flowmaster Super 10 exhaust. This 1981 Z28 has a lot of personality. The first thing that stands out is the color, sunrise orange metallic, inspired by a Hot Wheels Camaro called Orange Crush. It's definitely the kind of paint that grabs attention the moment sunlight hits it. Under the hood is a 350 V8 that has been bored .03 over, which slightly increases the engine's displacement and performance potential. It also features an L82 Corvette camshaft, a popular upgrade known for improving power and giving the engine a stronger performance character. The exhaust uses Flowmaster Super 10 mufflers, which usually produce a deep, aggressive muscle car sound. Inside the car, the interior is described as being in excellent condition, with new seat belts and new rear seats, along with Dakota digital gauges and a BM shifter with a classic 13-ball knob. There are a few minor issues mentioned. The paint has some imperfections and there's minor rust on the rear lower panel, but the seller is honest about those details. The heater and air conditioning currently don't function, but overall the car appears to be a solid running driver. It also comes with a Z28 decal kit that hasn't been installed yet, so the next owner could finish the exterior look if they want. For $17,000, this is another example of a driver-level classic Camaro with a few performance upgrades. Now let's finish this section with one of the most legendary muscle cars ever built. Car number 10, 1969 Chevrolet Camaro. Price, $28,900. Location, York, Pennsylvania. Specs, 144,000 miles, automatic transmission, small block V8, likely a built 350, 10-volt rear end, Pennsylvania inspection current. The 1969 Camaro is widely considered one of the most iconic muscle car designs ever produced. That aggressive front end, the wide fenders, the hidden light heads on some models. It's a shape that instantly tells you you're looking at late 60s American muscle. This particular car is powered by what the seller believes is a built 350 small block, paired with an automatic transmission. And the seller describes the way it drives in a pretty colorful way. They say it runs like a scared rabbit. That's one of those classic car seller phrases that basically means the car feels quick and lively on the road. Structurally, the car sounds encouraging. The seller says the body is very solid and not rusty, and the floor appears to still be the original floor, which is a very good sign for a car of this age. There are a few cosmetic things the next owner might want to address. The car needs repainting, and it also needs a headliner, plus the radio and heater controls are missing. But the important part is that the car currently has a valid Pennsylvania inspection,
which means it's roadworthy enough that you could potentially drive it home. And honestly, the idea of driving a 1969 Camaro home the day you buy it is part of what makes classic car hunting so exciting. That's cars 6 through 10, and already we've seen everything from unfinished restoration projects to serious performance builds. But there are still 10 more classic cars to look at, and a couple of them have stories that really stand out.
Car 11. 1974 Chevrolet Corvette Stingray. Price, $13,900. Location, Pennsville, New Jersey. Specs, 350 crate engine, automatic transmission. Exterior, red. Interior, beige. Mileage, TMU. True mileage unknown. Clean title. The 1974 Corvette Stingray represents the early part of the mid-1970s Corvette era. It still carries the classic C3 body shape with those dramatic curves and the long nose that made the Corvette famous. This example is finished in red with a beige interior, a combination that feels very period correct for the 1970s. Red Corvettes have always been popular because the color really highlights the curves of the fiberglass body. Under the hood, the car now has a 350 cubic inch crate motor, which means the original engine was replaced with a newer factory-built replacement engine. That can actually be a good thing in many cases, because crate motors are often more reliable and easier to maintain. The seller says the car has been mechanically refreshed, and that it starts easily, idles smoothly, and drives well. Those three things are honestly what most classic car buyers want to hear. This car is described as a driver-quality Corvette, meaning it's not a perfect show car, but something you can comfortably drive and enjoy. The seller is also honest about the mileage being TMU, true mileage unknown, which is very common with older vehicles where the odometer may have rolled over or been replaced at some point. At $13,900, this is a fairly approachable entry into Corvette ownership, especially for someone who simply wants a classic sports car they can drive on weekends. Now let's look at a Corvette that has been fully rebuilt. Car 12. 1971 Chevrolet Corvette Coupe. Price, $30,000. Location, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. Specs, manual transmission, exterior, blue, complete rebuilt, no air conditioning, no power steering. The 1971 Corvette is one of the more desirable years of the C3 generation because it sits right near the end of the high-performance muscle car era before emissions regulations started reducing horsepower. This particular car has undergone a complete rebuild, and the listing says it has only 800 miles driven since the rebuild. That usually means the car has been restored or rebuilt from the ground up and has barely been driven since the work was completed. It's finished in blue, which looks fantastic on the sweeping C3 body. When these cars are restored properly, the long fenders and sculpted rear end really stand out in sunlight. Another important detail, this Corvette has a manual transmission. That alone makes it appealing to many enthusiasts because shifting gears yourself in a classic sports car adds a completely different driving experience. The seller also mentions the car has no air conditioning and no power steering, which might sound unusual today, but was fairly common in performance-oriented Corvettes in the early 1970s. Cars like these tend to feel more raw and mechanical, which is part of the appeal for many classic car fans. At $30,000, this rebuilt 1971 Corvette sits near the higher end of today's list, but for a freshly rebuilt classic Corvette with a manual transmission, that price might make sense to the right buyer. Now let's look at something far more affordable. Car 13. 1978 Chevrolet Corvette. Price, $5,000. Location, Moundsville, West Virginia. Specs, 115,000 miles, automatic transmission, exterior, white, interior, gray, clean title. This 1978 Corvette might be one of the most affordable ways to step into classic Corvette ownership. The late 1970s C3 models have a slightly different look compared to the early Stingrays. They feature the larger rear window introduced in 1978, which improved visibility and gave the car a slightly more modern appearance. This one is finished in white with a gray interior, a combination that was quite popular at the time. The listing doesn't mention major mechanical issues, and the seller states the vehicle has no significant damage or problems. With 115,000 miles, it's clearly been driven and enjoyed over the years. Cars like these are often described as driver cars. Not perfect, not fully restored, but something you can own and enjoy without spending a fortune. At $5,000, this is one of the least expensive classic Corvettes you're likely to come across. For someone curious about Corvette ownership, it might be an interesting starting point. Now let's look at another Corvette project. Car 14. 1977 Chevrolet Corvette Hardtop Coupe. Price, $6,000. Location, West Haven, Connecticut. Specs, 115,000 miles, automatic transmission, exterior,
blue, interior, black, T-top roof, clean title. This 1977 Corvette falls into the category of a project car, but an interesting one. The seller says the car is complete, which is actually very important when dealing with restoration projects. Missing parts on Corvettes can become expensive quickly. This car also comes with T-tops, which were a signature feature of many C3 Corvettes. On a nice day, removing those roof panels gives you that open-air sports car feeling. The seller mentions the interior needs to be reinstalled, which suggests that the interior components may already be available, but simply not currently assembled inside the car. Another good sign is that the car has been garage kept, which often helps preserve both the body and the interior pieces over time. For someone who enjoys working on classic cars, a $6,000 Corvette project that's complete could actually be a very interesting opportunity. Now let's finish this section with a Corvette that appears to be in much better shape. Car 15. 1980 Chevrolet Corvette Coupe. Price, $17,500. Location, Middletown, New Jersey. Specs, 48,700 original miles. Automatic transmission. Exterior, blue. Interior, black. Holley fuel injection. 2 owners. This 1980 Corvette looks like one of the more well-preserved examples on today's list. The first thing that jumps out is the mileage, 48,700 original miles, which is relatively low for a car that's over 40 years. The car is also a 2-owner vehicle, which often means it may have been carefully maintained throughout its life. It's finished in blue with a black interior, a combination that works nicely on the Corvette's sleek body. One interesting upgrade mentioned in the listing is Holley fuel injection. Many classic Corvettes originally used carburetors, so modern fuel injection systems can improve reliability, cold starts, and drivability. The seller also notes the car has 4 brand new tires, which is always a practical detail when buying a classic vehicle. At $17,000, this Corvette sits somewhere in the middle of today's price range, but with relatively low mileage and only 2 owners, it could be appealing to someone looking for a well-kept C3 cruiser. That wraps up cars 11 through 15, and we've now seen everything from budget Corvette projects to rebuilt performance cars. But we're not done yet. In the final section, we'll look at 5 more classic cars, and then we'll wrap everything up with a quick recap and a few thoughts for anyone thinking about owning one of these machines.
Car number 16. 1973 Dodge Charger. Price, $12,000. Location, Hanover, Pennsylvania. Specs, 102,000 miles. Automatic transmission. Engine, 318 V8. Power steering. Power brakes. Exterior, green. Interior, green. Clean title. This 1973 Dodge Charger has that unmistakable early 70s muscle car personality. Unlike the earlier late 60s Chargers with the fastback shape, the 1973 generation moved toward a slightly larger and more luxurious design. It still carries a lot of presence on the road: wide stance, long hood, and that classic Mopar attitude. This example is finished in green with a matching green interior, which was actually a pretty common color combination in the 1970s. When you see one today, it immediately feels like stepping back into that era. Under the hood is a 318 cubic inch V8, paired with an automatic transmission. The 318 was known for being reliable and smooth, making it a solid engine for everyday cruising. The seller says the car has been garage kept, and that the body and frame are straight and rust-free, which is a big deal with classic muscle cars. Inside, the interior is described as being in decent shape, with only a small tear on the driver's side of the bench seat and a crack in the dashboard. Otherwise, the upholstery and headliner are said to be in excellent condition. Mechanically, quite a bit of work has already been done. The car has received a number of updates, including new fuel tank and sender, new fuel lines, Holley fuel pump, updated ignition components, Holley Sniper 550 electronic fuel injection, Edelbrock 4-barrel intake manifold, dual exhaust system. Those upgrades suggest the car has been maintained with drivability in mind. The seller says the car starts easily, idles smoothly, and drives well. And at $12,000, it looks like a pretty approachable classic Charger for someone who wants a driver rather than a full restoration project. Now let's look at another 1973 Charger, but with a very different story. Car number 17. 1973 Dodge Charger Coupe. Price, $33,728. Location, Charlton, Massachusetts. Specs: black, white, rear-wheel drive, coupe body style.
This 1973 Charger is being sold by a dealer, and the listing presents it as a rare collector piece. The car is finished in black with a white interior, which is a striking combination, and one that looks particularly dramatic on these large muscle coupes. One detail mentioned in the listing is that the car shows extremely low mileage, which is certainly unusual for a vehicle of this age. Listings like this often attract collectors who are looking for something that has been preserved or restored to a very high level. The dealer emphasizes the Charger's iconic Dodge design, which is easy to understand. Even decades later, the Charger name still carries a lot of weight in the muscle car world. Cars like these are often purchased not just as transportation, but as pieces of automotive history, something to display at shows, keep in a collection, or simply enjoy on special occasions. At just over $33,000, it's clearly positioned more as a collector's car than a project. Now let's move on to another Charger that sits somewhere between project and driver. Car number 18. 1973 Dodge Charger. Price, $20,000. Location, Wolcott, Connecticut. Specs, 64,000 miles. Automatic transmission. Exterior, black. Interior, black. Clean title. This black-on-black 1973 Charger has a very different personality from the previous car. According to the seller, the car runs well and has never had mechanical issues, and they even say they drive it regularly. That's always a good sign with classic cars. A vehicle that's driven often tends to stay healthier mechanically than one that sits for long periods. The seller does mention a few areas that need attention. The car currently needs a driver's front seat, the dashboard has a split, and the headliner and doors need work. The body could also use some cosmetic TLC. But the seller describes the car as very loud and sounding amazing, which likely means it has an aggressive exhaust setup that gives it that deep muscle car rumble. The reason for selling is simple. The owner says they are moving and can't take the car with them. At $20,000, this Charger seems to fall right in that middle ground between a project and a driver, something you can enjoy now while gradually improving it. Now let's take a look at one of the most impressive cars on today's list. Car number 19. 1970 Dodge Charger 500. Price, $69,999. Location, North Providence, Rhode Island. Specs. Numbers matching drivetrain. Original 383 4-barrel V8. Automatic transmission. Fully restored about 4 years ago. 700 miles since restoration. Now this car is something special. The 1970 Dodge Charger is widely considered one of the most iconic muscle cars ever produced. And this example appears to have been restored to a very high level. It's a numbers-matching Charger 500, meaning the engine and major components match the original factory specifications. For collectors, that's extremely important because it helps preserve the authenticity of the vehicle. Under the hood is the original 383 cubic inch V8 with a 4-barrel carburetor, one of the classic Mopar big engines from the muscle car era. The car went through a full restoration about 4 years ago, and since then it has only been driven around 700 miles, which means it has been carefully preserved. The seller also notes that the car retains solid original steel with no welding required during restoration, suggesting the body was already in excellent shape before the rebuild. There are also several modern upgrades, including Dakota digital gauges, electric bucket seats, LED lighting, full Willwood braking system. Those upgrades improve safety and usability, while still keeping the car visually classic. The seller describes the car as absolutely beautiful, and says it runs and drives perfectly. At nearly $70,000, this is easily the most expensive car on today's list, but considering the history, restoration, and rarity of a 1970 Charger, it's easy to understand why. Now let's look at the final car of the video. Car number 20. 1966 Dodge Charger. Price, $32,000. Location, Raymond, Maine. Specs, 57,344 miles shown. Engine, 361 V8 with 2-barrel carburetor. A727 automatic transmission. Exterior, dark blue. Interior, blue. The 1966 Dodge Charger is where the Charger story really began. This was the first-generation Charger, introduced by Dodge as a fastback performance coupe based on the Coronet platform. It had a very distinctive design for its time, especially the long fastback roofline and hidden headlights. This particular example is finished in dark blue with a matching blue interior, giving it a very classic mid-1960s look. Under the hood sits a 361 V8 paired with the A727 automatic transmission, which was one of Chrysler's most durable transmissions of the era. The seller says the car has no rust, which is always encouraging when talking about a vehicle from the 1960s. It also features a new dual exhaust system, which likely gives the engine a deeper, more classic muscle car sound.
One honest detail the seller includes is that there was frame repair on the passenger front area from a collision long ago. The listing mentions that the repair has been stable for years, and the car runs, stops, and drives normally. The car was also appraised in 2022 for $35,000, and the seller still has the original wheels and hubcaps. At $32,000, this Charger represents a chance to own one of the very first models in the Charger lineage, which makes it historically interesting for collectors. Now let's look at the final car of the video. Car number 20. 1966 Dodge Charger. Price, $32,000. Location, Raymond, Maine. Specs, 57,344 miles shown. Engine, 361 V8 with 2-barrel carburetor. A727 automatic transmission. Exterior, dark blue. Interior, blue. The 1966 Dodge Charger is where the Charger story really began. This was the first-generation Charger, introduced by Dodge as a fastback performance coupe based on the Coronet platform. It had a very distinctive design for its time, especially the long fastback roofline and hidden headlights. This particular example is finished in dark blue with a matching blue interior, giving it a very classic mid-1960s look. Under the hood sits a 361 V8 paired with the A727 automatic transmission, which was one of Chrysler's most durable transmissions of the era. The seller says the car has no rust, which is always encouraging when talking about a vehicle from the 1960s. It also features a new dual exhaust system, which likely gives the engine a deeper, more classic muscle car sound. One honest detail the seller includes is that there was frame repair on the passenger front area from a collision long ago. The listing mentions that the repair has been stable for years, and the car runs, stops, and drives normally. The car was also appraised in 2022 for $35,000, and the seller still has the original wheels and hubcaps. At $32,000, this Charger represents a chance to own one of the very first models in the Charger lineage, which makes it historically interesting for collectors.
So there you have it. 20 classic cars currently for sale, ranging from affordable project cars all the way up to serious collector-level muscle machines. We saw everything from 1960s Mustangs and Camaros to classic Corvettes, and finally some legendary Dodge Chargers. And honestly, that's part of what makes classic car hunting so much fun. You never know whether you'll find a simple weekend cruiser or a piece of American automotive history. If you enjoy looking at classic cars for sale, make sure you stick around. There are always more interesting listings popping up, and some of them are real hidden gems. If you liked this video, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And who knows, the next classic we look at might just be the one you've been dreaming about.